We are human, we are animals, we crave the ability to be we. I know it's called me undies. We undies might have sounded differently, right?
Is it a disco now?
Yeah, it's an after party, so it's now we go with the flash.
My goal in life is to be a laptop sticker.
Me too.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
It's a great honor, Mr. Jaffe. It's always nice to be with you.
I'm so happy to be with you. I'm honored.
Thanks for doing this, too. It's a real service to the community.
What a great organization and a show that offers hope, optimism, creative solutions, entertainment.
Thank you for doing this, Joseph. It's your gift to the universe, and it's appreciated.
Very human, and I like that.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, welcome everybody to our Friday edition of The Week That Was. And what a week it was, the week that was. My name is Joseph Jaffe. I am your host, and we're going to mix it up quite a bit. We're mixing up the mix-up. We're mixing up the mix-up, so to speak. I was getting ready for the show, and I realized that I don't even know if I shared the show, because I set it up last night, and I didn't necessarily even go out and tweet about it today and share it. But who cares? What I care about right now is you. What I care about is the fact that, as I said, we're mixing up the whole idea. This is meant to be a 9 a.m. Eastern Daily Time show. It is meant to be a breakfast show. It is meant to be a coffee show. But my guest today, who's not even my guest, is actually my co-host. He's a previous guest. He's a current friend. He's a regular on the after show. Mr. Joey Dumont, he is going to be our co-host. Let's bring him straight on to the show. Joey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, buddy. It's nice to be here.
So we're going to do a few things. There we go. There's our nice little
music now.
I know we go. We're innovating. We're innovating. So in addition to recapping the week that was on the show, we're going to be doing something else, which is celebrating, elevating, and hopefully compensating. That's my new mantra. Elevate, celebrate, and compensate. You apparently wrote a book.
I apparently did. I mentioned it a couple times over the last couple of years.
Do you remember how much fun we had with that? Apparently, you wrote a book.
Yes.
By the way, I forgot. Kiana is here, and she said, "Love recovery anybody's." Love recovery anybody's. I know who Kiana is. Kiana just interviewed me this week, and Kiana, you were my muse. Because I actually wrote about you in one of the seated soliloquies. I don't know what she means by this. Do you know?
Do I know? I have no idea.
Recovery. She'll explain. We'll figure it out soon enough. But Joey, you are my guest today. You are my co-host. Actually, you're not my guest. You were guest number 31 on the show.
Almost a year ago.
And it's amazing to me because, you know, you put out your intent into the universe, right?
Yeah.
You said you were writing a book. You were writing the book. The book had been written for the most part. You were rewriting the book.
I was rewriting a lot of it.
You were dealing with, I don't know, so many issues in terms of whether it was imposter syndrome or I don't know, whatever you were dealing with. But the book is real. We're going to talk about it a lot today. But as I said to you, you know, you are my co-host, so we're gonna co-host the show together. Let's do it. By the way, did you see the sponsor of the show is your book up there?
I love that. I love that.
You see the little, you know, it could have been the Jaffe coin. We could just be saying we're live, but instead we're going to talk about your book. So we will get there soon enough. Today actually is National Name Yourself Day. I thought that was very, very appropriate, right? When you talk about the book, right?
Yeah.
So it's National Name Yourself Day. So who are you? How do you describe yourself, Joey, today?
Very simply, I'm a storyteller, stay-at-home dad, and coach.
That's great. So you don't actually introduce yourself as a recovering douchebag.
No, I mean it's in the title. So,
No, I love it. I mean, I love it. I'm teasing a little bit, but I absolutely love what you've done. You know, I love the fact that you have you've reinvented yourself just like I have. I mean, we've both reinvented ourselves over the last year, and you know, truth be told, from a joy factor, happiness factor, where are you right now?
well, right now I'm in a state of flow because it was a 4-year journey. I started writing this book in May of 2017, and I told my wife I was going to take a year off my career to write the book, and then I would jump back in, and that was 4 years ago. So it was I think we've talked about this. It was a piece of my ego wanted to get back into the game of being an executive in the ad biz because I got a rush from that. I really enjoyed the people, I enjoyed the industry, but this was a bigger piece for me. I wrote this book for my little boys so that they would know that their heroes are vulnerable, and that was the goal. And then as I dove in as a storyteller for a living, I was pretty good at that part. The writing part, however, needed a lot of polish. And so after about a year, I brought my brother in, who is himself a writing instructor. He teaches legal reasoning and writing in law school, and he has a master's degree in writing composition. And so we sat side by side on the couch every Sunday for about the next 2 years, where he just tear apart my work and tell me that it was terrible, or he liked certain pieces and parts. And then once we got it cleaned up, we handed it over to a professional editor that Brad Behrens referred to me, and she ripped it apart again. And that was middle of last year. And so we spent the next 6 months putting it all back together, and getting it all done was just happened. April 2nd, my wife and I were on holiday, and we were in Park City, excuse me. And we got the book published on April 2nd, last Friday. And that actually, when we got back from vacation, this was waiting for me. And this was the first time I held the book in my hand.
Isn't that
And
great?
oh man. And it was the first time because you can go with templates when you self-publish, but my wife said, "You will hate it, honey." And so she did all of the typesetting and all of the margin and formatting. It took her 15 hours. She's like, "You owe me again." And I was like, "I know, babe, thanks."
Funnily enough, my wife actually helped me with my book with Built to Suck as well. Did a full edit, you know, of the book as well. And it, you know, our wives are our biggest allies and our fiercest critics, I would say. And I'm projecting onto you, but fiercest critic meaning because they love us so much unconditionally. Yeah. You know, they're not gonna. Why on earth would they want to pull a punch? You know, why on earth would they want to? Would they not want us to be the best versions of ourselves imaginable? But it hurts. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I still believe that I suck at taking criticism. I hate it. I hate it so much. But I admit that I hate it, and I'm learning how to be better. And when it comes from your wife, it hurts even more. And yet you know that it's coming from a place of unimaginable love.
Yeah, the good news for me was that my wife did not want to read it until the final editing was done. And then from that, she gave me feedback. So that was the neat thing, is that she actually really enjoyed the book, and she had a couple things that she wanted me to change. Obviously, I think I shared with you when we first started, she does not like the title, The Life and Times of Recovering Douchebag specifically. My mother thinks the title is dirty. And as I share in the book, my therapist told me it was a breakthrough. So it was one of those things where the title was not going to change. And the more resistance I got from people like, "I don't know, Joey, I don't know if that's a good title." I'm like, okay, if you don't like it, this works. Because as we know in advertising, you have to stand for something.
There's such a soundbite there, right? My wife, my mother, and my therapist. You know what I would have done? I know it's too late now, but I would have just had 3 endorsements on the back: your wife, your mother, and your therapist.
Well, my acknowledgement was to my wife, and then one of our longtime regulars is on the back is Tom Morris. He was one of my actual authors who told people he loved my book. So he's actually on my cover, and I thank you, Tom, if you're listening.
Wait, you got Tom to endorse the book and not me?
I did.
Oh, wow. Well, anyway, that was Joey Dumont. He's off the show. I'm not going to take it personally at all, except for the fact that he has now been shadow banned from the show forever. That he would go with Tom Morris above me. I still have ego too, damn it. All right, you're back. But
Hey,
that's strike last night with Faith and now with Tom. Yeah, you know, you're at strike 2 with me, buddy.
I got one more. I'll be very careful now.
You better be. If you want to be on the show today, well, you know what? Let's keep moving. Let's keep moving on with just some of the. We don't have too much in terms of preamble. A little update on the Jaffe coin. The Jaffe coin is at about $2.44 today. But something that's kind of interesting, which is, you know, as I continue to think about ways to integrate the Jaffe coin into the Jaffe economy, into the show, into my life, into my thought leadership, into my IP, whatever the case may be, one of the things that I'm going to start to do is on these Friday shows, and really in general, have 3 groups of people that can come on to the show. And so if you want to be on the show today, all you have to do is go to bit.ly/the week that was and today's date, and you can actually come onto the show like right now if you want to come onto the show. But moving forward, the way that I'm actually going to implement this will be regulars, you know, so like you, Joey, are a regular. Previous guests, you, Joey, are a previous guest, and or Jaffe coin holders. Now I can see who owns Jaffe coin because it's on the blockchain. It is publicly available. And to be clear, these are just Jaffe coin holders. This doesn't mean sending me a Jaffe coin. I don't own and don't need to own a single Jaffe coin. It just means that you have bought into the economy, and so therefore you should be a part of it, and you should enjoy the benefits and the rewards of doing so. So it's an opportunity for you to come onto the show and talk about whatever is on your mind, talk about what's happening in the world, talk about a previous guest on the show, and we're going to be going through those highlights of those previous guests soon and shortly. So David Libby is here. He said, I can only hang for a few, but wanted to hear from Joey, somebody. You are hearing from him today. Joey, what are your thoughts about this idea of, in a way, it's earning your way or buying your way onto the show, right? But the buying it's not necessarily even about hard, you know, monetary buying. It's about you can buy with your time or with your money. And that's really what I'm kind of getting at here.
I think it's great. I mean, as someone who's spent, I think you've done 240 shows or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
I've probably been on close to 200 I've watched. As you know, when I take vacations, I check out. So I haven't been on your show for the last 2 weeks because I've been skiing. But other than that, I think that it's a really cool concept, and I hope it works for you. I really do.
So do I. Well, I can also imagine, I mean, if I had to ask you this question, which is, besides the relationships and the connections you've made, like Tom Morris, for example,
yeah.
You know, you must have learned, because I know I have, so much in this period of time. I mean, talk about this almost like a degree, right? It's almost like an MBA, having, you know, every day being able to be inspired, educated by, you know, whether it's Moshe Engelberg or Harry Cohen, or, just all these guests with different perspectives on superpowers, on the future of work, on, it's on justice, on, on escaping cults. We've had them all.
Yeah.
It's been crazy.
Well, I think to your first point, I've spent a lot of time, many hundreds of hours actually with your show. And I've made really good friends, and Bob and Tom and you and Stephen and Steve Garfield. And all these cats that I did not know previous to the show. And so for me as an extrovert, we made jokes about this when we all became in lockdown. Like, what do we do now? What do extroverts do? There was a funny meme that was going around Facebook that said, have you called your extrovert friends? No, I'm serious. because they need attention. And this show gave me that, specifically the after show, where I became friends with your friends. And it's been a really cool ride. And I do thank you for that. You always thank us, your guests, your regulars, for attending, but it's right back at you. You gave us a place to go. You gave us a place to build community. You gave us a place to go and be educated. And that's, a couple people. I have a guest on named Daniel Gutierrez, who was your guest. And he was the gentleman who left his 7-figure career here as a executive coach and moved to Peru. And I was so taken with that guy that in the after show, I talked to him a little bit about some of my gurus and the people that I followed over the years. And you were kind enough to make an introduction to me. So he's on my podcast on the 28th. And thank you for that. So yeah, this is, for me.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear that. Are you going to do something with him in Clubhouse at all, or will this just be recorded?
No, this is
offline?
on my podcast. Yeah, this is on my podcast. I don't know. I it's pushing it just to get him on the show. So
no, I know. I love him. I love him to pieces. Manif says buying the Jaffe coin is believing in everything that the show stands for, especially thought leadership and independence. Thank you, Manif. And I'm wondering who's going to be the first person to come onto the show today. Where is Tom Morris? Where is Steve Garfield? I should have reminded them. I need to spoon feed my regulars, damn it. Come on, guys. bit.ly/the week that was 040921. Who will be the first? I tell you what, I will send you a Jaffe coin to be the first today. So now I'm paying you, damn it. Glenn said basement flooded today, so my time to participate is nil. Have a great weekend. Good to see Joey Dumont again. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Sorry about your basement. That's not good.
That's not good. Yes, Farnham, where are you, buddy? You're going to get a Jaffe coin if you come into the show. Spoon feed indeed. Well, let's talk about guests next week. Man, look at these guests. You cannot believe who my guests are this week. First of all, Dr. Robin D'Angelo, who wrote White Fragility, is on the show on Monday. I'm thrilled. I cannot. And Michael Casson, who is essentially the godfather of he really is of our space of marketing and advertising on Tuesday. I did actually have the chief marketing officer of Intel, Karen Walker, on the show on Wednesday, but unfortunately, she has a personal issue that came up and she will be rescheduling. So I'm working on a guest for Wednesday. And then on Thursday, Bryce Hoffman, who wrote a book on red teaming. I cannot wait to talk to him. Essentially, red teaming is not dissimilar to the 10th man principle or even to the idea of heresy. It is a whole practice, philosophy, way of thinking in terms of almost injecting a contrarian perspective that keeps you honest. And what ifs, what if you're wrong? That's how I understand it. So, I don't think any of these guests will be on at 9. So that's just for Tom, who I know has a bedtime commitment. But that is next week. I think the reason why Bob is not on is because he's driving. So we're going to ask him not to log on while he's driving. Let's do some birthdays. Well, I mean, you can see a whole bunch of people on there. Mr. Daniel Brosen, Brian Frank, Ann Greenberg, Peter Searle, but Scott Monty, previous guest, current friend of the show and of me and of us, the Bowtie Man, the Sherlock Holmes Man, the Timeless and Timely Man. Happy birthday to you, Scott, and many, many more. And on LinkedIn, let's just see anyone you see there, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook that Joey. Anyone having a birthday today?
I do not know anyone today having a birthday, and not on this list either.
All right. Well, hope you're having a good day. All right. So we are here for the most part to talk about the week that was. We are here to talk about your book, Joey Somebody. But what we'll do is we'll start off with Monday. So this week was a crazy week for me, Joey. I
what? Yeah. Sorry.
Fine. We'll do it live. It's fine. I told you, you're a co-host. You can do what the hell you want. This is as much your show as it is mine today. But this week I actually had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night shows, what I call late night Jaffe. And it was a real opportunity for me to see what happens when I start to test out my hypothesis about reinventing the variety show. In 2020, I reinvented myself. In 21, I seek to attempt to reinvent the variety show. Brian Fanzo was in the house. Brian has been just an absolute light, and his star is on the ascendancy, certainly with Clubhouse in the forefront. Brian describes himself as ADHD superpowered. I found out that he was a semi-professional poker player, and in this first clip of the week, he actually talks about the connections, I guess, between the poker room and the Clubhouse room.
I mean, poker table is amazing because people always ask, like, what's the tell, Brian, that we all have to watch out for? And I was like, I just watch your feet. Did you just say watch my feet? We're at a poker table. And like, your feet are the number one thing that you give away no matter what. It's the furthest from your brain and your heart, right? So, but it's also the thing, like, you can just watch someone's shoulders and how they kind of, if they're tapping their feet or where they tuck their feet. I quickly realized that I needed to adapt my environment to be my best self. And so when I'm on Clubhouse, I'm on my feet the entire time. Like, I do not, every single time I unmute, I am on my feet. I'm walking or I'm standing up, because I think it's me kind of counterbalancing the fact that I don't have those nonverbal cues. Because I will tell you, I get away with a lot on stage as a speaker because I can read the audience. I will say, like, every story I tell on stage, I have two versions, a 5-minute version and a 2-minute version. And I have no idea which one I'm going to do until I'm reading that audience.
So first of all, I just saw while that clip was going on that DMX just passed away, and also, of course, Prince Philip passed away as well. So we certainly send condolences to both of their families, to very different people, very prominent people passing away today. So a little bit of sad news as well. Happier news is that Glenn just donated 10 Jaffe coins to me. So we go from from one end of the extreme to the other. So thank you, Glenn. I will enjoy my new Jaffe coins. And he has a little shout out for you. Glenn, I also owe you some information on StreamYard templates. I know that you reached out to me, so we'll connect, I'm sure, over the weekend as well. Joe, what did you think about that clip with Fanzo? I mean, I love the idea of the feet, right? So he's on his feet while he's in a audio only or audio first environment, but also how he looks at the feet and how the feet are so important in the poker room as well. It was a little connection that I made in terms of being able to read the room, even when the room, is I would say does not have any visual, verbal, non-verbal cues from a visual standpoint.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask him if I was going to be in front of him, how do you read feet? Because it's hard to read feet when you're sitting at a table, but he's looking at movement. So if you're crossing your legs or if you're moving your feet, your body's moving, so he can see that.
And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can look underneath the table, right, depending on where it is. But yes,
obvious though. But I think the thing that I took away from it was that a lot of comedians talk about watching the room, and so every single show is different. So the state you're in, the county you're in, the bar you're in, if you're at the store versus at Cobb's versus wherever you go. And so you have to read the room and understand. So his 5-minute, 2-minute version makes a lot of sense. And I think Scott Monty was one of the first people I talked to, or you talked to, that stands up when he talks, even on virtual shows. So I think that body language and gusto and confidence is a really good idea to stand up, specifically on Clubhouse, because it can be difficult to, for me, it's difficult to read a room because you can't hear, see, touch. And so it's not my favorite platform because of that.
Well, it's so funny because, I had Scott Rouse on the show, Mark Bowden, both of them are body language experts. And I remember actually the 60-second highlight from Scott Rouse. I remember saying to him, how do you read the room when the room isn't real, referring to a Zoom environment? It's amazing to me, by the way, how much wealth and insight can come out of a 55-second clip, a highlight from an entire 1-hour show. And I spend quite a bit of time editing down to that 55 seconds. It's not overly creative. Generally, it's just, how the hell am I going to fit this into 55 seconds? With the placeholders. But it's amazing how concentrated that insight is. I have one more for you. This is another. This week with Fanzo was too good just to focus on one. So he has a bonus clip, and this really talks about what being, as he calls it, ADHD superpowered has given him in terms of these clubhouse reading and reading the room skills. That's the wrong one. This is the right one. Do you think, based on first impressions, do you think that you've been able to read people even in this audio first environment? And my follow-up question to that is, how often from those first impressions were you in fact right about those initial gut reactions?
So I would say yes, I do a pretty good job on that. I think a lot of it comes down to the cadence, right? The cadence and tone, being very sensitive. I am, being ADHD and I'm medicated. One of the things that I'm very blessed with is that when I am focusing on something, I become hyper aware of my surrounding. And so for me, being that hyper aware, like I'm even, for me, I try to even, what is the first word someone says after I'm done talking, right? Like, because you can judge a lot about what you just said based on what someone is replying with, so that next time, like, was it too long? Was it too short?
It's just another great insight, right? Which is the first, and it made me very self-conscious because I had to think about, oh crap, what am I going to say now after he just said that?
What did he give you an example of what? Because if he talked too long, what did someone say? What was their first word? Did he actually give an example of that or no?
I didn't ask him, but that's why. I mean, if you had been my co-host, then you would have done. Then you would have done that. But I'll tell you what he does do a lot. What Fanzo does, he'll always go, "I love that." You hear that a lot on Clubhouse. Wow, I love that. So it's a bit of validation. Yeah, it's validation immediately. And one of the mistakes that we make sometimes moderating in that environment is not to acknowledge what was just said. So you just kind of like, well, that's great. Then our next caller is, or you're thinking what you want to say, and there is definitely merit in being able to just validate, even if it's a statement that you just say, "Wow, thank you for your contribution." Right? By the way, Monif says, "Where did the background music go?" Well, it didn't go anywhere, but I mean, I can give you some like this funky douchebaggy music, I think. And finally, Tom Morris found the show. He said, "I could not find the show at noon and thought I'd missed it altogether. Now I find it 25 minutes late." Well, Tom, we've been talking about you, about the fact that you've endorsed this book, that Joey just completely bypassed me and ignored me. He clearly didn't care what I had to say about the book, but that's fine. I'm glad you're here. And Tom Morris, you have to call into the show now. So here is your assignment today, is to click on that link, bit.ly/the week that was 040921, and I will even send you one Jaffe coin for coming on the show today. So come on.
You can retire now, Tom. Well, just also, since we're revisiting the Tom Morris quote, Tom Morris, my publicist told me the day before publication, "Do you have any friends who will endorse this book?" And I said, like early readers, because they had to read the book.
I know where this is
Sadly,
going.
You have not read my book.
I know where this is going.
So that is.
I'm not even.
It's not that I didn't think of you, Joe.
I'm not even going to say touche. I'm going to say douche.
That works. That works.
No, you know, I kid only because I love you, man.
No, I know. Love you back, brother. It was
so. So let's talk about the book. As I said, in between these little vignettes, I want to talk about the book. Why don't you talk about the initial reception to the book? The book is out. I've seen so many people posting not just ringing, resounding endorsements. How's the reaction been right now? I looked on Amazon. All of your reviews are 5-star. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that initial community reaction to the book.
Yeah, that's a great framing, because it's friends from our industry, right? So the majority of our friends from the media industry have gushed about it. Even our literary buddies like Jim McCaskis and Brad Behrens and a couple of these cats who I was worried about giving the book to them, but they loved it and they gushed about it. And I think the neat thing for me is that my high school mates too, all my buddies from Santa Rosa, they were unbelievably supportive and came out in droves, bought the book. I had a couple of my old mates as early readers. And so the consensus has been glowing, as you pointed out. But the neat thing for me is the consistency of the reviews, which is that it's heartbreaking, it's funny, it's self-deprecating, it's educational, it's, honest. I think unapologetically honest. There was a couple of them, and that was really the goal. So when I shared this with my brother, because as I've shared with you, he suffers from depression and he likes to get these little nuggets of goodness. And so I read him some of he doesn't go online at all. So I read him some of the comments and he was like, well, the allegory worked. And then he smiled and I said, yeah, it did, Paul. And so the neat thing was that we wanted to share relatable stories, sadly, about all the things that I don't want to say most people, but tens of millions of people go through, whether it's bad parenting, alcoholism, addiction, depression, anxiety, divorce. That's kind of what the memoir is about through the lens of, I would say, dark humor or self-deprecating humor. And it's a fine line to tread. And sometimes we'd fall on one side or the other and we'd have to bring that back. And my editor did a very good job of helping us with those areas where we were a little gray or we introduced things. So like the earliest version, I had my little brother's death in the first chapter. And I actually walked through frame by frame when I found him and what that felt like. And she said, hey, there's a couple things. We don't understand Stevie yet. We don't know who he is. So you really can't introduce him that early on in the book. And she said, and then I hate to actually say this, but there will be people out there that will accuse you of using your little brother's death as fodder, as a hook. And I was like, oh God, my anxiety is not going to deal well with that. So we took her sage advice and we moved the actual death scene to a linear path in the book. And it was little things like that that helped the overall narrative and helped the flow and helped not jostle the reader back and forth until we had some more character development. So it was just a really cool thing to see it all come together. And the reviews and the love that I have from, my high school friends and then our mates from our industry has been overwhelming. And so the anxiety of releasing the book to the wild and getting no feedback or really, I love you, Joey, but nothing good on the book. That is no longer a concern for me. It's now just going out and doing what I want to do with the book as part of a platform. My podcast is the other part of the platform. I want to have fun discussions around mental health. And then even things, as we've talked about before, there's a huge narrative in the book about male arrogance. And is it a good thing or a bad thing, which is what we hosted on Clubhouse last night. And it's a needed discussion, I think, within our culture, within our body politic, within our corporate world. And that to me is another area that I'm looking forward to. I don't want to say a thought leader, but someone who's actually been in that space, who's lived through the business world with a mask of arrogance, and it worked. So it's something I want to talk about.
I have so many thoughts about that idea, right, of arrogance. And is it a good thing or bad thing? I mean, we could have an entire conversation about that. But yeah. Before we do, I wanted to just look at a few comments coming in. Are the little dudes coming on the show?
He was trying. He doesn't want to now.
He can.
I know. I told him to come over.
Tell him he can be live on the internet. Manif asks, "Is the book going on Audible?" And here's before you even is he ready to make his debut? Go on.
Right there. There you go. This is Conanan, everyone. This is my youngest. This is my 7-year-old.
Hey, Conanan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, now he's shy.
So the advantage of the book being on Audible is that at the speed that you talk, you'll be able to listen to the entire book in like 12 seconds, which is amazing.
Well, that's actually a good point because I have been working on the Audible version, but I had to slow that cadence down considerably So it's one of those things where there will be an audible version, Manif, and I have a lot of buddies that ask me the same question, and it's going to be me doing it because I cannot have someone else doing the douchebag voice. They can't do my mommy's voice. They can't do my dad's voice. And so, yeah, my friends are looking forward to the audible version for that reason.
Except maybe Howard Stern, because he does his, he does his dad's voice. Huh? What do you do here, Howard Stern? Okay. All right. So Tom says, wait. I was supposed to read the book. Oops, just kidding. I read every word and loved it. Let's see whether in fact he did or not. Tom Morris, we're going to test.
There he is.
You made it. You just earned a Jaffe coin.
Hey guys, I didn't even hear that part. That's awesome.
You can retire
I
now.
have to pay people to come on the show now.
It's about time I got paid to be a philosopher. So thanks a lot, man. But I guess I was just paid for showing up.
I'm just paying you for your good looks.
Yeah, I'll leave for 2 coins. So, in a minute it'll be 3. But, Joey's book is so great for a lot of reasons. And one is this. I met Joey because of this show. I met him when he had been totally undouched. He was the anti-douche when I met him. And it just goes to show you, when I read the book, I'm reading stuff about his life that I'm thinking, this is the same guy I know. This is amazing. It's almost like Jane Austen's books 100 years ago or 120 years ago about the people we meet and how we jump to judgment. I mean, what if I'd met you, Joey, back in the day, with the black fingernails and the pirate look and all this kind of thing, and I would have thought about you a totally different way than I think about you now. But knowing the today Joey, I'm able to incorporate that into the story and understand how people develop over time. And Jane Austen's really good in her novels about the masks people put on, the roles they play, in the different dramas they enter in life. And your book just gives the reader a real sense of how at different stages of our lives we wear different masks, we play different roles, and how those roles don't need to degrade us or take away from who we are, but can in strange ways create the better person we're going to ultimately be. So your story is a story of hope, optimism, positivity. Wait a minute, that's starting to sound familiar. And I loved it for that reason and many others.
Well, Tom, you've earned honorary co-host status. So we're going to ask you to stick around as we watch the Corona Bite from Freddie Laker on Tuesday night, late night Jaffe. Freddie started a collective called the Chameleon Collective, and I was able to really pull a whole bunch of amazing nuggets together that talks about this unique future of work approach that he's bringing to the table. And this is a man who has created so many companies and business models and approaches. So let's give that a watch.
The company is basically a company in service to the people in it versus a bunch of people in service to a company. The company, as crazy as this may sound, is not designed to make money at the center. I'm learning, which is counterintuitive in full transparency, to every business I've ever been involved in the past, that the more I give away, the more I get. Worth noting, by the way, completely decentralized. It has no formal hierarchy like a traditional company.
You're the crypto company. You're the blockchain
I've heard
company.
people say, you refer to us like this. It's this kind of like decentralized company.
It's a lot of the same values. But there's another one as well. We capitalism versus me capitalism.
We look for people that are more about the we than they are about the me. I didn't think it was possible to run a company this way, but now I couldn't imagine running a company any other way.
Again, it's kind of like crazy that all of that fits into like 55 seconds. But I thought, Tom, you in particular would love this idea of the way that he flipped the idea of in service to, this in service of, and how this collective approach, this fluid, this flexible, this dynamic approach, so contrary to the hierarchical, patriarchal approach. I thought you'd be all over that.
Yeah, did you invent the phrase "we capitalism"? If so, you got to patent that, trademark that sucker right away.
1000% yes. No, I didn't. No,
Well,
not even close. Not even close.
My response as soon as I heard "we capitalism" was "oui, monsieur, oui." Very good, good phrase.
I did create when I've had too many cups of coffee. I've created "we capitalism."
Yeah, we won't go into that. But Joseph, it reminded me of a former guest on the show, and I can't remember who it was, but he said, "Look, whenever I hire somebody, the first day there at work, I say, first of all, you don't work for me, I work for you." And I thought, well, that was a great thing to say. And then he said, the second thing I say is that once you've worked for me for 2 years, if you haven't made a mistake, you're fired. And I thought, whoa, he should have said, once I've worked for you for 2 years, if you haven't made a mistake, you're fired.
Ooh,
but I thought the sentiment was
that? I can't remember who that guest was, and I generally remember a lot, and I take notes. But
you do.
But we're gonna. So you have two pieces of homework. One is to register on rally.io so I can send you your Jaffe coin.
I've got motivation now.
Because you sure as hell aren't sending any to me. And the second is to tell me what guest it was that said that. I'll send you another Jaffe coin.
But you see, I've got
if
this
you tell me.
You played the thing about the guy at the poker table. I've got this all figured out now. You're going to send me one for being here, but you've already promised us that if we send you one, you'll send us two. So I'm going to send yours right back to you and then get two. And then I'll shut up about it, and you'll probably give me 3 or 4 for that. So I feel like a wealthy man already.
I often actually, one of the things I always say, like sometimes when I'm on stage or I'm being auctioned off or whatever, I say first prize, is 1 creative brainstorming session with me. Second prize is 2 creative brainstorming sessions with me. So I know from whence you come.
Yeah.
Joey, we're going to go back to you and ask you a specific question about the book. One of the things is you write the book and you have no way of knowing how it's going to land and how it's going to be impacted or how it will impact. Is there one thing right now in terms of a reaction or a response that has surprised you, good or bad, in terms of how it's actually landed and resonated and been internalized by people?
I think I mentioned it already, but it's probably worth repeating, is that the consistency of the reviews. My publicist is very impressed with that because it means that the book has the allegory necessary for people to glean what they did. And so that's the hardest part about storytelling. The one thing my brother continued to reinforce as we rewrote and rewrote and rewrote is he would say, stop telling me, show me. And so if I wrote something like, I feel really insecure, he goes, the reader doesn't care what you feel. Put it in writing, like put a camera on, tell me what happened in that day. And so then I would write what happened. So I was showing what was happening. And I think that's the biggest piece of the feedback, is that in the stories, people glean what they're talking about: the unapologetic honesty, the douchebaggery, the humor, the tragedy. So it was a combination of making people laugh and cry. And that is, I think, the best piece of feedback I got, was that hit home. People laughed, and then they cried, and then they felt, and then people that were rooting for me. That was another thing that I thought was neat. I even had a buddy say when he met me, he's like, I really didn't want to like you, but because of your appearance. But he goes, I just fell in love with you because you're a lovable douchebag. And that is actually kind of a theme within the book, is that I genuinely love human beings. I love people. And because my insecurities sometimes were so outlandish, I would admit those, and I think I've shared this with you before, Joseph, when I would have women come up to me and say, who are you, at a bar? And I would say, I'm Joey Dumont. Who are you? And they'd say, well, are you in a band? And I'd say, no, I'm just a poser. And they would say, and then they would laugh, and they'd say, what do you mean? And I said, well, I don't play an instrument. And they're like, why do you wear black nail polish? And I was like, well, if I didn't have black nail polish, would I be talking to you?
I love it.
And then they would laugh. And then so it was like that level of honesty was kind of what we tried to inject in the book, was that what worked for me as a douche was admitting it. And so when someone says, oh, you're such a douchebag, I'm like, I'm not a douchebag. I'm the douchebag. So please understand the difference. And that was, it threw people off. It was kind of like the Costanza
Yeah.
One of my favorite
Love
Costanza
it.
moments where he became the opposite, you know.
I love it on so many levels. I mean, obviously, I know you. We know each other. Everyone did love you, and you know there are people who don't pose, who are not lovable. There are people that are so arrogant in our business, in business in general, and the unabashed douchebaggery was exactly the humanity that made you so lovable. So I love that anecdote. Well, we have about, I'm going to keep this to an hour. I'm going to keep Morris for one more because the next soundbite is Gregg Lunceford, and it talks about retirement. And I thought it was very appropriate to have Tom on. Tom, I certainly hope that all the actuarial tables are accurate and you live to at least 90 because the world needs more Tom Morris.
That it does.
But this is a really interesting concept. We had in fact, I actually coined a new term. Instead of retirement, I called it refinement, as in, are you fired up, right? Firing up for the next phase of your life. Even Gregg was telling me that it's amazing that the actual term retirement came from the idea of being tired, of actually being physically and mentally tired. The word retire, it comes from the word being tired. And here's something, a different way to think about what happens between middle age and old age.
There is this new phase that most people don't know about, that it is mentioned in some academic literature, and it's called the third age. And this represents this space where you don't transition from middle age to old age, but you transition to this space in this third age where these are the best years of your life. And then you transition to old age. And why are they the best years of your life? Well, tell me what other part of your life where you are healthy, you're wiser than you ever have been, you fulfilled all your commitments to other people, you're financially in a better shape than you've ever been in your life. And so what better phase in life is there where all you have to be concerned about is what you find fulfilling, and you're still healthy enough to do it for a long time? You can do this for about 20 or 30 years.
He also said something so amazing. He said, it is often at this time, the artist formerly known as retirement, he said, where many people, and this blew my mind. I should actually go back and create another soundbite on this. He said, in some cases, it is the first time in that person's life that they are making an independent decision for themselves. That every decision they've made up until that point was based on what their parents wanted them to do, what society wanted them to do, what their kids needed them to do. This is the first time that they are genuinely free, liberated, and independently making a decision in terms of what do I want to do next in my life. I thought that was an amazing concept.
Yeah. I agree. I think what was cool about that for me is that I fit that bill in the sense that I am, I'm 54, but I am very healthy, very lucky that way. I am madly in love and I have 2 healthy little kids. And I made this decision on my own. And I think the hard part was extracting the societal constructs from my ego to say, you shouldn't be doing this. You should stick with this. You're running an ad agency. You're at the top of your game. Stay with it. You got 10 more years and you're done. And I quit at 50. So, 6 more years, I was retired, done. Just like everything's all good. And that was very difficult to let go of. And then the fact when I did do that, and that was with much help from my wife, who would continue to say to me, baby, I got this. Go create, go build something. And because of her, I got through it. And then accepting the role as a stay-at-home dad was something that was difficult for my ego in the first year. And then the last 2 or 3 years after that, it was like, it's the first thing I say. I'm a stay-at-home dad and I'm a coach and I'm so happy about my life. And there's also a Jack Ma piece to this. I don't know if you've ever heard him, but he talks about when you're in your 20s, you need to look for a mentor more than you need to look for a company. And then in your 30s, you need to take that mentorship and apply it into leadership. And then in your 40s, you need to max out what you've been doing. And then in your 50s, you need to teach. And I'm paraphrasing him here, but that's kind of where, for me, the first time in my life, I'm doing something in the service of others. This platform about unabashed honesty, about self-deprecating storytelling, about being vulnerable, about admitting that you're scared sometimes, because this world can be scary at times, because you're sad at times. Those things were huge for me to teach not only other men, but to help other women understand how men function, why we function the way we function. And so now for the next, 20 years, like he's talking about, I don't have any retirement plans. I want to do this. I want to be.
You only have refinement plans. Well, we're going to have one more quick cameo, and then I'm going to bring Anna Bowman onto the show. She's waiting in the green room, and then we're gonna do our final Corona bite. So Anna Bowman, you are now on the show. You're live.
Hi, Anna.
I think you might be on the treadmill right now, and you're definitely on mute. Anybody lip read? And
she's gone.
She was here today. She was gone tomorrow. Tom, you're going to be gone in a moment. Go find me that guest. Go register on rally.io. Send me the Jaffe coin. And remember, I will send you back 2 in return.
And by the way, Joey, that concept of the lovable douchebag, I think you've got the next Will Ferrell movie right there. I think we need to sell film rights to your book. Between, we capitalism and the lovable douchebag, you guys have made my day. I mean, I like George Costanza, I think I should leave the room now. This is the high
That's
point.
it.
All right. And there he goes. So I have this love relationship with Tom Morris, right? It's only love. All right. Well, we're Chip showed up in time to see Tom get kicked off.
Good timing, Chip.
Timing is everything. Well, we don't have much time left, but we do have time left to show the final Corona bite. Oh, I shouldn't have said it. Damn it! I'm trying to avoid that word now. But you know what? I'm learning how to be better at it. But it is Charisse, Conanan Johnson. An amazing conversation. She wrote a book called Wealthy Girl. She describes herself as the original wealthy girl. And we spoke about wealth creation with respect to not just amongst girls, but also Black girls, female Black entrepreneurs. Just watch this final sound bite, and then we can comment on it as we wind down today.
When you have an event, and an unprecedented event, a negative event like COVID-19, you kind of exacerbate some of those inequities. And so as an effect, over the last 12 months, there have been, and the data has shown, about 40% of Black businesses have closed their doors, right? And the segment within that of Black women, the data is a little bit harsher to parse out, but you can imagine that they're a big portion of that number. Because people are way more aware of some of the inequities, reset the system and the way that capital was flowing to these businesses.
You riffed on the idea of the rising tide, except for the fact in some communities, it's been the water overflows, and in others, it's barren and you can't find a trickle. And so that tide has to be consistent, I think, across the board. Tom says I should have known better than to go anywhere where there's a bouncer. Joey, it was an amazing conversation with Charisse, and in particular, this whole idea, we spoke about it earlier in the show about the rising tide that floats all boats. And she said, yes, but it wasn't even a yes and yes, but what happens when the tide is not equal everywhere? And that was the inspiration or the genesis for this idea of, in some cases, in some societies, in some constituencies, it's overflowing, and in other cases, it's barren. And I love this concept of resetting the system. We also spoke about what you don't see or hear in that clip is this idea of expanding on how many groups have not had fair access to capital, even through the paycheck protection program. So an amazing concept, not just about wealth creation, but wealth creation combined with social justice and with a more equity-based approach to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think that what she talked about, the inequities of the last 12 months existed. But what happened with COVID is that they were enhanced and they were moved forward quickly. So I think that's the bigger difference, is that COVID didn't necessarily change anything. It's just accelerated everything that was happening, including inequities. And I think I didn't know the numbers around 40% of Black businesses going out of business, but we do now know that Main Street and Wall Street are not connected. And that's been another proof point specifically with the market. People in the market have had a banner year. And there's also these wonderful analogies out there about we are all in the same storm, but some of us are in yachts, some of us are on speedboats, and some of us are on rafts. And so there's a really big difference between that. And we need to take care of the people that are on the rafts.
Yeah,
and
well said.
I think that's kind of where, that's what I can glean from that little soundbite.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you can get from just one soundbite. Well, I've just put this on the bottom right there, which is we're going to go and have a little bit of a Zoom after show soon. All you have to do is go to bit.ly/Zoom after show and you can participate. We're going to wind down now. You are watching The Week That Was, where we look at the week that was. We highlight 4 amazing guests. If I'm lucky enough, my co-host is one of those previous guests. In this case, not just a previous guest, but a current author and a current friend. Joey Dumont, author of Joey Somebody, The Life and Times of a Recovering Douchebag. You can get it wherever books are sold. I've put a link to the Amazon page into the comments a little bit earlier as well. So please go out and support this book, this message, this wonderful human being who is showing what every male should be doing in terms of being a role model to their children, to their spouse, and to other people out there dealing with douchebaggery, if you will. If you will.
Thank you, buddy.
Joey, I'll give you an opportunity just to say a final couple of words, and then we'll head on over to the after show.
Well, thanks again for having me as your 31st guest. And I'm not sure exactly where this sits, but it's been wonderful to be on your show twice. Even better to get to know you over the last year of spending a couple hundred hours with you on your well-produced show. So continue to do all the good work, dude. And thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. And I dig the music.
This has been Joseph Jaffe, your host on The Week That Was. You can't not but want to put on your faux radio voice. Steve Garfield says, looking forward to reading the book. And Tom Morris adds, so glad it was Joseph and Joey tag team today. Well, there's nothing else to do except to go to our other buddy, Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
All right, let's head on to the show. Goodbye, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will be back on Monday with Dr. Robin DeAngelo. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.